Good morning. I'm Wart Ahmed, and today I have Richard with me here today.
Good morning, everyone.
It's Friday. It's March 7th. It's the end of the week. We're
Yeah.
here. How are you doing, Rich?
I'm very good, Ward. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Is it true? Do you think that
Yeah.
when I moved to the region first, people used to say that, don't send proposals to clients during Ramadan because decisions won't be made and documents won't be signed by senior people who are fasting. Is that true, do you think?
I don't think it's true. I think people are in a good mood. It's even more reason to send it.
Yeah. Do you think people sign stuff off and think clearly and make big decisions?
I think it depends on when you send it. I think after 2 p.m., that's when it starts going downhill.
I know.
That's when the brain crash starts happening. But do you struggle when you fast, Richard?
Well,
do you find it easy?
I'll tell you something. Something in the office yesterday to do with, streaming and sports. And had a meeting, and afterwards I thought of a big decision. And I was reflecting on it later, and I thought, would I think of this decision if I was fasting or not? And is it the right decision? And should I make it now, or will I wait until, after? Would I wait till another period? Will I dwell on it more? So I was just doubting my judgment and my conviction because I was fasting.
By the way, I think it's true. I get really angry when I'm hungry. I'm just easily irritable, and I make certain decisions. But then after I eat, I was like, wait, that wasn't that deep.
But so, other question then: do you think if this region, 22 Arab League countries, has close to 400 million people, and say 80% of them fast for a month, do you think it slows the economy down?
Yes, I do. I do think
to do with less hours, or to do with there's less focus on transaction and deal making and business?
I think it has to do with less hours. But I think the hours depends on the person. For example, me, no, I do not clock out after 2. I'm still there. There's a lot to be done. But some people do. They see as it's their, and it is their right. It is their right too.
Yeah.
But
and
some
similarly,
people don't.
In other countries that have different religions, business does shut down for 2 or 3 weeks around festive periods and things like that. Businesses close from 20th of December till 5th of January in many parts of the world. So yeah, I guess other factors. I think if you answered yes to that, then you'd also say that 4-day work weeks slow business down.
I do think it slows business down.
So do I.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I do think it slows business down. But just on this point that Richard just mentioned, it kind of reminds me of the topic of Zisramax. We didn't mention it on the show yesterday, but basically, if you guys haven't heard of it yet, Arabian Business, they published this exclusive piece about how, out of nowhere, Pfizer, they pulled out all of the Zisramax stock out of all UAE pharmacies. And it's just completely shocking because, that's Zisramax. Have you ever used it, by the way?
No,
ever?
No.
It's a really famous antibiotic. I take it. I know a lot of people who take it, and it's kind of that antibiotic that you take once you reach a stage in the sickness where it's I'm not getting any better. A week has passed. I need to take it, and it's just completely disappeared off the shelves.
Yeah.
And in the entire UAE, and people don't have access to it. So it just you kind of reminded me of it because you were mentioning business going down. Do people not have things? And people right now don't have access to it, by the way.
Yeah.
And it works as the best antibiotic. So it's almost concerning, but we'll see what will happen with that. What will happen with that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I take your point, and but I think it's just the timing of that. I don't think that's happened because it's Ramadan.
Yeah, I don't think that it's happened either. It just just a coincidence. You just kind of reminded me that it happened.
Yeah.
But let's get into today's topics. So the first one for today, this one's a really big one. Talabat has acquired InstaShop in a $32 million deal. Now, the reason why I think this is also really interesting is because InstaShop, its parent company, is Delivery Hero. And Delivery Hero also just so happens to be Talabat's parent company. I think I also find it really interesting because of the fact that when you compare them, InstaShop and Talabat, Talabat is way far ahead. It's doing way better. What do you think about this, Rich?
Yeah, I think the timing of this and the history of it is interesting. So, we've covered at length, Talabat's journey of how it was started, I think in Kuwait originally, and then how Delivery Hero bought it. And Delivery Hero acquired the assets of this entity. I really should know this. This entity in the UAE that, what is it called? Oh, I really should know this. Sorry. Delivery Hero bought this group of companies, and they can you Google it? They bought this group of companies, and that group of company had acquired, or maybe it'll come up here.
Let's find out.
So Delivery Hero bought a group of companies. Anyway, so Delivery Hero then bought InstaShop, which was started by John Tesouris, a Greek entrepreneur, in 2015. And they bought it in 2020 for $360 million. So just, the $360 million acquisition 5 years ago, now for $32 million, which is many multiples less. So the analysis in the market is that this isn't a market value. This is an internal transaction. So it's not a market value deal. But the timing of this is interesting because generally, in an IPO prospectus, what I've seen is that these things are sort of done just before IPO to beef up the prospectus and to make the group look bigger and stronger. But then, in this case, it's obviously done with IPO money, but sometimes it's done with pre-money. So if this 30, if they're moving this asset under their books onto another entity, it's basically an internal merger, division merger in a way. But they're doing it now. Delivery Hero spun off Talabat IPO, and we reported at length that a lot of the funds were used for the loss-making Frankfurt-listed entity. But obviously, there's 32 million left over, but not $1 billion and not 360 million. So, and obviously InstaShop was still private. So so that's all that's happened there. The founder had stepped down since 2023. He's actually gone on to set up a new AI company, which is really interesting, that I think we'll sort of look into. But so the Talabat CEO is separate now, and they're public, and they've sort of acquired InstaShop. InstaShop, Instacart is massive in the US. InstaShop is popular here. I mean, we use it at home, and it is popular.
You use it?
Yeah, and it's redesigned as a brand, and it's more than groceries. Like, it's obviously all very merged here, and in every country in the region, if you're listening in Saudi or Egypt or Kuwait or Qatar, every country in the region, it's, delivery apps are a bit different, and some of them debate at length, are they ultra apps, are they super apps? Do they merge, groceries with food delivery? And with transport, I think the synergies between food delivery and grocery delivery in terms of behavior type is quite similar. It's different to asking for a car to pick you up. But if you're at home or at your work and you need something delivered, whether it's from a pharmacy like an antibiotic that you might need.
Or from Spinneys.
Or from Spinneys.
That's my favorite part. The fact that they deliver things from Spinneys. It's really good.
Well, I think the inventory sort of got bigger and bigger, and all these things are a bit different. I was in an office tower the other day in DIFC near the Bentley, or is it the Aston Martin showroom? I mixed up one of those brands, and I was in the tower, and I was in a podcast interview, and a guy called Mahmoud Batawi, the founder of 500 Under 500, who sold an app, a meal plan company that eventually sold to Katopi. He and I were doing a podcast, and afterwards we were talking about the devalue of properties when there's loads of bikes outside, and there was many noon bikes, and we walked by the building and we saw a fancy lobby that's usually commercial or offices or residents, and there was a big noon sign. So basically, noon now do 15 minutes, which is a killer feature, and they deliver lots of stuff. But the Katopi and the noon model is sort of warehousing and have things centralized. And what they do is they take these units in these buildings so they can get it to you fast. But they're taking unit in a commercial office tower. So the InstaShop model was to partner with existing stores like Spinneys, which came online later, but a lot of the earlier ones were Almaya and Lulu and Grandiose and things like that. So in the fundamental business models were different, right? One is sort of warehousing and moving things fast to you like Amazon does. And the other one is existing bricks and mortar retail. And why Spinneys didn't go early to an InstaShop and many people don't. And there was actually resistance. In the early days in the UAE, there was resistance to a lot of cafes to go on Deliveroo. I remember some of them. They
Really? Why?
the margins. You're already selling your salad at a certain price, and you want to own the customer. Two stories I remember particularly. Richie's salads were, Richys, were really big. Anyone who's been in UAE for about 15 years will remember this. And the owner told me, no, he's not going on the app. This was about 10 years ago. And then the delivery business sort of ate the lunch, so to speak, pun intended, I guess. And then the other thing that happened was Freedom Pizza, which, again, there's a lot of backstory to the brand Freedom Pizza and, the original name for that. But anyway, very good American entrepreneur who's since left. He's in the UK now. He established Freedom Pizza, and then he built another app around that for all his stores and for all his food chains, and he started hiring his own drivers. So
because he didn't want to oversell.
Yeah, no, he wanted to own the endpoint with the customer. He wanted to own the delivery experience. And when you ordered from one of his stores, they would greet you differently. They would say the menu at the door. It wasn't just a hand out and leave. With a smile, all the delivery, a lot of respect to them. They always smile. They're always friendly, even though it's quite a tough job. But basically, a lot of people try and own the full end to end. So there is a bit of resistance on that level. There's a 30%.
Do you think that resistance still exists?
I think some people do think of this as business people. I think if you have a restaurant, I think you will try and have, and a lot of the food industry here, some groups came together and said, well, we build our own app. The Food Shake guy on Instagram, will we build our own app? But I think the resistance exists, but there's definitely, over the last 10, 15 years, there's an acceptance, both that the utility and user experience of these apps is far superior than you can build yourself without your in-house tech. And also the penetration is so vast. Kitopi, when they're valuing businesses, they don't value any in-restaurant dining. It's completely valued on order metrics. Yeah. But they came from the sort of cloud kitchen world, and then they started buying restaurants. But the whole industry has really shifted towards delivery and food and things like that.
I see what you mean, though, Rich. I think you have a really good point, because I think some people are kind of getting both sides of everything. And a very prime example of this, I feel, is Sarah Hamouda, so the founder of Fix Chocolate. Because have you noticed, she only sells it through Deliveroo. It's only through Deliveroo. And I feel like the fact that, she wasn't like other restaurant owners who were like, okay, I'll give Noon the rights, I'll give Talabat, I'll give Deliveroo. Because some restaurants do that. I find them on every app. I use every single one of them. But she only gave it to Deliveroo. So in a way, I don't know how to explain it to you, but I feel like I do have that relationship with her. Because it's only one stop to reach her.
Yeah.
It's not like multiple stops.
I think firstly, I don't know the full details of this transaction, but you would suspect that there are two things at play there. One is capacity. They blew up very fast. They got really big really quick from December 2023 when the Russian influencer did the viral video up in 2024. So they blew up very fast, so capacity, and they didn't take money to build studios, to build factories. So, and then the second reason is Deliveroo knew they were onto a good thing. Exactly to your point, exclusivity can drive loyalty, and anyone trying to keep someone sticky on an app, whether it's a streaming service or whether it's a delivery service, knows that you need USPs. You can't have the full same catalog as everyone else. So Deliveroo knew what they were doing when they spotted this, and then in the early days of that, you would have seen big billboards in Sheikh Zayed Road all about to buy Fix Chocolate, paid for fully, I suspect, by Deliveroo as part of that deal. Hey, stick with us, and we'll put you front and center.
It's fair. It's so fair.
It is fair, and it's and from a brand point of view, for her, it does create that sort of premium entity, and you get good service. But obviously, obviously you'd wonder if you're in her situation, or if you're in Fixed Chocolate's situation, are you missing half the market? Because we're sort of led to believe that half the market is split. But as you pointed out, we all use all the different apps, pretty much. Everyone, for different reasons, whether it's for offers or whether it's for convenience or whatever, but in each country, it's quite likely, just like we have 2 or 3 streaming services, whether you're in Saudi, you're likely to use Jahez and Hunger Station. In Egypt, Abud, our guy in the Egypt office, was telling me that an app has done really well there. And that's buy now, pay later. But anyway, but in Qatar, where we were last week, Sonu have 45% of the market. And Sonu, do you know Sonu?
No, I've never heard of it, actually.
Yeah, so Sonu's a really good story. They never took VC money, and they're trying to be the first unicorn out of Kuwait. We actually interviewed the founder on Smashi Business, and there's a video on Smashi Business, him telling the swallow bird is Sonu, the swallow bird is the name of the bird. But I passed through the Qatar Food Festival. I was going on a morning run on the Corniche, and the food festival was over, and the sort of pop-up restaurants were being sort of removed. But there was this big sign on the entrance with a map of Qatar, which isn't that big a peninsula or a region or a country. And the boast was that Sonu delivers north, south, east, and west, right? So it was like in 15 minutes, or, it didn't say time. So there's pictures of the Sonu logo all over the country. And I thought, that's interesting, because usually we see this sort of marketing for coverage networks, like with 5G, and that's let them do, because that's a point, right? And especially, it would also be a point if you're a delivery service that does all 13 regions of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is a massive country. But to use that as a flex in Qatar, where it's quite a small place and everyone kind of almost basically lives in Doha anyway. Yeah. But I just thought it was interesting. But it is a point to place that they were first mover, and in all these markets there's first mover. Like, we're talking at length about InstaShop and Talabat. Obviously Talabat are regional, but their market share in Saudi, I don't even think they're in Saudi. Talabat actually is in Saudi, but they don't have much market share there at all. And it's interesting about acquisitions and things like that. Why would they buy InstaShop? Obviously, they want to double down on the UAE market. You mentioned Spinneys. Spinneys are trying to enter the Saudi market, but they're not sort of there yet.
And Spinneys lately, are you seeing their TikTok?
No.
Oh my God, you need to open Spinneys TikTok. Great marketing, by the way. I think they hired someone Gen Z to do all their videos.
Love this.
And Richard, they're getting so many views. They're getting so many views. And you know who else is doing it really well? Wireless. Yeah, I think Wireless in age. Yeah, when you see all of their ads, it's I just know someone my age is in that department. But anyways, back to Spinneys.
Brilliant. But someone your age is with it. But I think we should do something on this Spinneys TikTok, either cut from the show, or we should just tell people about it, because I love that sort of creative stuff, because they have to reach young people, right? But yeah, keep going.
They do, but they're doing great right now, and it's and I think what is so hilarious to me is the fact that all of their employees, everyone is taking part in this. They're participating in the audios. And do you know how tough that is, by the way, to go to a millennial and be like, hey, can you say this audio with me? Not anybody is going to be really accepting of it. But no, I think it's no, not anybody's going to be accepting of it. Do you by the way, the lingo that Gen Z uses?
The lingo. I thought you were meaning to behaviors about different ages. I don't understand it fully. I don't know.
Really?
I don't hang out with Gen Z people.
Oh, no.
Apart from you guys at work.
That
but
makes
at work,
sense.
you don't really use the lingo too much.
I remember, what's it called? I remember there was this one time I was speaking to Casey and Akash and everyone. I was like, oh my God, this ate. And they all looked at me. They're like, what do you mean by that? I basically went this ate and left no crumbs. They're like, what do you mean? And basically, when you tell someone that, say, Rich, I'm seeing you doing something insane. Do you know what I mean? Interviewing someone. And then I look to the person beside me. I'm like, oh my God, he's eating. You're doing amazing. That's basically what it means. Yeah. But that's. Have you heard that before?
No, but I would have guessed. But no, I haven't heard of it. I get you. There is a generation divide. But yeah, it is. Spinneys resisted doing e-commerce for a long time. They didn't open an e-commerce shop, and their lunch was eaten a bit by Gibsons, who went direct to consumer with high quality. Spinneys positioned themselves a little bit in other markets, like in the UK, like Waitrose. It's that premium, high quality, pricier. I'm thinking fresh veg, fresh food, good meats, and stuff like that.
By the way, even the way that Spinneys has stationed themselves. So I've noticed this in different communities. Obviously, in different villa compounds, there's always a community center, right? There's always a Spinneys. so many times I found a Spinneys there, and I've noticed like during lunchtime, during like 2, 3 p.m., people don't need to order because people just go to the Spinneys that's right beside them. They
Yeah.
all drive over, by the way. You should see how it looks like at lunchtime, at 3 p.m. And yes,
in Dubai. Yeah.
although like what they sell, like their fruits, they're overpriced, their vegetables, their food, like their meal plans, they're not. And I think that's something really smart that they've done.
Interesting.
You know, like you go in and you're like, oh my God, like I can get half a chicken for just 10 dirhams. You know, and I can get a salad.
So
That's
they do
a
have
meal.
good value.
Yeah, that's a meal
You know,
below 20 dirhams, and it's healthy too.
There's a old trick in supermarkets around what you just mentioned, where they will lose money on certain products because they sell on the rest. So they will undercut themselves on milk. They will actually lose on a liter of milk because they know someone was going to, that will get people into the shop, and that might, if people used to always ask business people in FT interviews, they would say, as a way of asking a business CEO, are they in touch with the price of a loaf of bread or the price of a loaf of milk or a liter of milk? So that's a kind of an old trick of like doing discounts for certain things because you know the basket price in Spinneys will be much higher than a Carrefour. But yeah, it does go to the point, like Spinneys is a regional brand, Waitrose isn't, and you know, Carrefour is under Al-Fatame, but it's also kind of more prevalent in the region, I think, than it grew in Europe. Like Spar and others are big in Europe. But yeah, but how do they roll out across the region? We're talking about delivery apps, but then Starbucks, right? Like Starbucks is, now the second story was that they're shutting down 4 stores in Jordan. And
according to Roya News.
Roya News. And you know, I think there's some mixed messaging going on here because the CEO of Starbucks globally spoke at the World Government Summit in Dubai recently saying they're hiring in the region. And I would have thought that would have been an Al-Shaya CEO should have made that statement, not a global CEO, because he doesn't operate Starbucks in the region. Al-Shaya do.
Yeah.
But you know, we mentioned that Carrefour had rebranded in Jordan
To Hypermax.
And Starbucks didn't rebrand in Jordan to Hyper Coffee. They shut down.
Completely shut down 4 stores, and I think the reason why and this is what you said, like you said, you know, he came here, the global CEO of Starbucks, and he said that, you know, we're hiring more people, but then you also see him going to Bloomberg and going like, you know, the boycotts, they're really hurting our brand. It's like, you know, what really is going on here? And what's really going on here is the fact that, you know, the people in Jordan, they do not stand with the Israeli genocide. They don't stand with it, and they've boycotted it, and that's why I think, I believe allegedly it's closed down. And even more interesting, by the way, last year, Starbucks, according to Reuters, they carried out 2,000 job cuts, and even at some point, Al-Shaya Group, so basically they're the people who that have the license to franchise Starbucks over the Middle East. They were even going to sell some of their stakes from that, but then they pulled out of it. So, you know, I think it's very interesting that the way the entire thing is happening because, you know, Starbucks, they have this really interesting statement on their website, by the way. Let me just read it to you guys. So, you know, basically they have the question, is Starbucks a political organization? And then it says here, no, despite false statements spreading through social media, we have no political agenda. And then they actually make sure to say that we are not supplying any money to the Israeli government. We're not supplying any money to the Israeli army. And then they also make sure to mention that the last time that they tried to operate in Israel, I believe it was like in 2003, and it didn't work because of some, you know, operations purpose. So, and I think these statements are good, by the way. I think it's good that people. You don't think so?
Why? I do. I think Corp Commons is good, but I don't think it's telling the full picture.
I see what you mean, but
I think they should own up to it. I think, you know, the links of the CEO for many years, Schultz's links is clear. And you know, we interviewed Tech for Palestine founder Paul Bigger, who's based out of France now, is in the US in Qatar, and he has 42 entities on the Tech for Palestine website, including the Boycott app. And if you want the real link to these things, because I guess people will wonder why are things being boycotted. But you just have to sort of look and see, because it would be a shame if things are boycotted for no reason. But you know, and I think big companies do well to come out with corp comms. But I think we'd respect them even more if they admitted they made mistakes in the past. And you know, I'm not saying that they did. I don't know. But I think, you know, just saying that there's no truth in it whatsoever. It's a bit insulting to
I know.
some people.
I see what you mean, Rich, but when I said that, you know whose side I was actually on? I'm on Al Shire Group's side. Because, you know, in the end of the day, they're based in this region, they're based in the Gulf. I don't want to see them lose money. And I remember I had this conversation with somebody, and at that time, I was boycotting Starbucks. They weren't. I'm like, why aren't you boycotting it? Like, you should be a part of the movement.
Okay, I don't boycott Starbucks, and we're talking about Jordan here, and I'm not talking about personal opinion. I think just corporate statements. I think, you know, when we see trust in companies, and Starbucks is a brilliant brand, and it's an amazing brand, but they will lose trust. Corporate statement isn't just about coming out with a corporate statement. You have to be transparent. The Gen Z are too smart. You know, they have to be transparent. The internet's available. You know, Gemini won't answer this question to you, but Grok 3 will answer if you ask the specific question about the links and stuff. So, but like, you know, in the UAE, I don't think it's hit Al Shaya as much. But in Jordan, it obviously has. And Al Shaya made a decision to close. Majid Al Futtaim made a decision to rebrand. You know, the drinks business, like if you look under the hood of the drink, like say Pepsi and these companies, they're really hurting the region. So yes, it's affecting the economies in the region to a degree. Are people drinking less soda, less coffee? I don't think so. So that's why I love the free market of the region in this degree. I love I don't mean just independent coffee stores, but there are other international chains in the region in coffee as well. There's many, and in soda waters and stuff. But I do think it's a trust issue on brand and corporate statements. And then to your point about Al Shaya, I hope that they navigate this storm.
The same way that Majid Al Futtaim did.
In any way, you know, I think this is the beauty of business, is that there are other ways to do it. They could come out with a statement. They could decide not to. They could acquire a regional coffee chain. They could
and expand it.
Yeah, they could do many different things. They could create their own brand. You know, we know from e-commerce that own brands are very strong.
Yeah.
You know, if Amazon have their own brand, if Carrefour have their own brand, so you know they stock goods and then they have their own brand. But you know, Al Shaya could maybe use a lot of their data and knowledge. It's like any issue with franchise. Like we talked about the media industry before, about Vogue. You know, Nervora are choosing to fight with Vogue in the US in the courts.
And they lost.
Did they lose?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
they did.
Are we doing that?
I got it from an insider source. From
Okay, well let's document that one. Unfortunately, but maybe they could have spun up their own Vogue, like Smashi style. Rather than choose to fight in the courts.
I don't think Shashi Manan had that one in mind. Because I think, you know what it also is, Rich? Sometimes people are just attached to the glamour of something, especially something like Vogue. Like, can you ever get it? I don't think I'd ever, like, choose anything over Vogue, by the way. And this is me, you know, someone who's a big part of the Vogue market telling you this. I just trust Vogue. It's old, it's traditional. You know, they've kept up with the trends.
They have. And it's incredible. And, you know, legacy media brands with IP are incredible. And I agree with you. I think I could convince you to trust something else.
Really?
Well, I think we can.
What else? No, I don't think so.
I think we can. I think, you know, what Sashi and his partner, who I used to know, his business partner, what they did really well is they hired, I think the first editor was a Saudi editor, and they hired really well locally. And they really created the Arabic version. But what Vogue did really well internationally, when they launched Vogue Russia, and over the years, when Condé Nast did, is they're well oiled at this partnership thing. And they usually sign deals that they buy out at the right price. So they don't go in with all the money at the start. But Vogue obviously are a legacy IP brand. But I think, you know, our vision for Smashi style is to be a Vogue for Gen Z, right? And we're already gaining trust with talented people like you. For Smashi business. People might have said 10 years ago, I won't trust anything else other than The Economist. I won't trust anything else other than Bloomberg for business, or, you know, in the region Arabian business. I think we will prove with Smashi business, by being more in tune with the local region, with more business issues in the region, and being better at packaging things on digital, and being at events and being on ground and hiring talent to understand the region, I think we'll do a better job over time than I think we have a good chance of beating the IP, international IP. And we've proven it with Love in Dubai, and I do believe in it. And yes, there is weight in an international brand, absolutely. Whether it's Starbucks or not, I see why I'm jumping between sectors. Whether it's Starbucks or not, but I think that's what branding a market is. And you know, you can always penetrate a market. You can always, if you have the right product, the right branding, right funding, you run a business properly, your timeline might be extended, and it might not be a zero-sum game, and you mightn't get the full market share. But you know,
but Richard, you have to admit that these like boycotts, they've definitely allowed a lot of these brands to actually penetrate the market. Like if you came to me like 3 years ago, I was buying Starbucks. I'll be completely honest with you. But the fact that, you know, everything that happened and I stopped drinking it, I looked to other brands, and
for sure,
the market that exists for coffee is so beautiful.
For sure, I would say that the boycott exists. I would
Yeah.
say it does. But, and it has an impact, obviously, because we know we reported on it.
Yeah.
And I think these companies have reported on it themselves. But also, I think consumer trends, you know, you grew up here, Ward, the choice of a burger 15 years ago is different to the choice of the burger now, and it's not driven by boycotts. You know, the emerging markets, appetite to spend, more money in the pocket creates more options, and if the barrier to entry is low, it creates change. You know, there's pickle. Pickle came from Dubai. Salt, celebrating 10 years.
Aman al-Marri.
Yeah, right. If what we're saying, if that's not true, then Shake Shack would have 90% market share, because Shake Shack is probably on that level of those two I just mentioned, right? And I think it's the same in media. I think it's the same in coffee. Breadfast, a really impressive company out of Egypt. I really like the guys there. They're really impressive. We covered them recently. They spoke at Leap in Saudi. So Breadfast started off with fresh bread directly to your door in really fast space of time in Egypt, right, where people love bread, and it's, you know, it's that bakery idea. But he decided to own the end chain, so the full thing, to own the app, and then they built such a good app. I think there's 3 founders. Mustafa is one of them, really nice guy. And so they built a full end chain, and they basically call themselves a logistics company, Word, because they can do the end chain. And since they were so good at delivering bread, what did they create? Coffee. And now they nearly have more branches in Egypt, in Cairo, than Starbucks. He doesn't mention Starbucks when he mentions it. It's quite ironic. On the Leap stage, who was interviewing him? The regional CMO for Tim Hortons. But
What
it's
an all-rounding moment.
Yeah, but it's not a full competitor, because they're started with bread. They're a utilities logistics app. They're a delivery app. But I went into one of their branches in New Cairo recently, and I ordered a protein bar that was branded Breadfast, their own brand. They called something else. So going back to this point about own brand, now they're probably doing many things, and they're looking at like how much of stuff are they selling on the app? Are they selling their own coffee? Are they selling bread? And they've just entered into Saudi, and they're doing the same supply chain logistics in Saudi, where they're having their stores in a place where they can get to you fast on their app. It's a consumer app. It's not a B2B app.
Have you tried the bread though?
No, I've tried the coffee, I've tried the protein bar, but in the store there wasn't bread, or I didn't see it. But yeah, but this is the point. This is so interesting, isn't it? Like, you know, InstaShop and Talabat. What does Talabat mean?
Talabat, يعني الطلب. I'm requesting something of you.
Okay.
أنا بطلب منك.
Okay,
Yeah.
love that pronunciations and learning Arabic. But basically, I'm requesting something is like Amazon, the store of everything. Amazon didn't say books.com, so Talabat is everything, whereas InstaShop doesn't say coffee, but Breadfast might just say bread, but then they're obviously doing a lot more as well.
Yeah. Oh, these are really interesting points, by the way, which brings us to the final sector that we're going to discuss today, sports. I know that a lot of people here love sports. So something really big has happened in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, which is worth nearly $1 trillion, according to Bloomberg, and TKO Group, which is basically the parent company of UFC and WWE, partnered to launch this new boxing promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you called it, it's not a league.
Yeah. So just explain the rest of it, and I'll then share.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay. So essentially, it's it's this partnership between them, and it's set to transform the boxing world in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. The reason why they're involved is because they want to provide financial backing, and this is all a part of the kingdom's 2030 Vision 2030 vision to to expand by that time. And this is a huge a part of their sports investment strategy. But just seeing this right here, what are you thinking, Rich?
Yeah, so basically, Turki Al Sheikh, his title really is involved in the minister and the entertainment side, and the company that's also in this logo is you have UFC, you have TKO, and you have Sela. Sela is the sort of entertainment body that runs Muslim Riyadh season, and that does that in Saudi, and it's basically Turki Al Sheikh's arm for a lot of stuff. So we've got videos now with Turki Al Sheikh, and I keep calling him Joe Rogan, but it's not Joe Rogan, it's Dana White. Dana White, obviously, the well-known promoter for UFC. And what's interesting about Dana White, and why I think this is interesting, call it promotion, Dana White's a big promoter. In the history of boxing, we're known, it's known to be the promoter world. The Simpsons did a skit on that famous American promoter, what was his name? The guy with a big afro haircut.
I forgot his name.
But really famous guy, really charismatic guy. And then in the UK, you now have Eddie Hearn, Barry Hearn's son, and you have the different promotion things in the UK. So what was happening in the UK was, who was owning boxing were the promoters. One was Matchroom, and the other one, right, Top Rank. So Matchroom Boxing and Top Rank were promoters, and they would promote their own fighters that they have as an agent. So they would manage talent, and then they would get fights for their thing. But there was no governing body for boxing, right? And Turki Al Sheikh sort of stepped in, and Riyadh season would promote boxing fights in Vegas and in London and whatever. But in every other sport, there's an organizational body, and they're all almost the custodians of the sport. And what happens is either the players don't feel they're getting enough money, right? So that broke up the golf, and that's where Live Golf came in against the golf entity in the US. And there's many debates about WTA, the men's tennis, and ATP is the men's tennis tour, and WTA is the women's tour. And a beautiful story emerged last night, and we'll cover it. For the first time ever, WTA are giving maternity leave to tennis players. Tennis players don't get salaries. So they've created a fund, female WTA, for maternity leave for tennis players, which is absolutely incredible. Serena Williams didn't have a baby for many years, and I think this is one of the reasons, because there's no funding. Obviously, priority and different life choices and everything is fine, but it's so hard to make money as a tennis player because the governing body doesn't give them salaries, and for a long time, actually,
I never heard of this before, Rich.
And women, well, to credit the WTA and ATP, they're one of the only dual organizations that do give equal pay. Like, they're pretty good, pretty good aligned, even though the Grand Slams, the durations of the men's matches are 5 sets and women's are 3, but they're pretty good at distribution, whereas other sports aren't. I'll leave it at that. But basically, people criticize Saudi getting involved in these things, whether it's the golf. They criticize Live Golf a lot. And they also criticize the tennis, trying to buy tennis now. They call it sports washing. But when you see what PIF have created a fund, like Novak Djokovic tried to do a players thing, to set up a new thing because he felt that the WTA wasn't being fair to players well enough. And he was one of the ones who was benefiting because he's in the top echelon. And boxing hasn't had this governing body. All we know is the promoters. And they have their own interests.
They had these events. They hosted these big events that everyone attended.
But we know the promoters. And what the interesting thing about Dana White is that he's created a league. That there's one championship in the Singaporean kind of Indonesian one, and then there's UFC, which people know. But for a long time he contracts the players, the fighters, and he tries to give them the junior people a chance and give them salaries. Now, we don't have that equivalent in boxing. So what it looks like, what they're doing, it's not a league, UFC's a league or whatever, but what they're doing a promotion. So it looks like what they will do is sign up all the boxers around the world, give them things like money in case they lose a fight. There was a sad story of a boxer in Ireland, Northern Ireland, that died from a ring injury about 2 months ago. And and he, and I'm just wondering, if we have a fund, if Turkey Al Sheikh's vision, would his family get some money now as a compensation for what happened in the ring? And I think this is what's so interesting. They say he saved boxing. I think this is what's so exciting about it. But let's read between the lines. TKO is a listed entity. It was something that Ari Emanuel of IMG and Agent World fame in the US did.
Yeah.
So they did a merger of all these entities. You mentioned at the start, WWE is wrestling, who signs wrestlers. UFC is MMA, who signs MMA. Now, it's just interesting that Sella and TKO have done something. What I suspect, I'm reading between the lines and I'm just guessing, I think what we will see is the name of this promotion that they haven't announced. I think what we will see is a JV that will be Saudi-based. I don't know, but I suspect this is what will happen. Because what Saudi have done really well, if we see leap in the events industry, they didn't give the event to Informa. They created a JV, Takaluf, if I'm pronouncing it well. And Takaluf now is owning all the events in Saudi, powered by the expertise of Informa, who are global operators. And Informa do a lot of the Dubai World Trade Center stuff. So what I think will happen here is this promotional entity will maybe a governing body, will be used to operate. And maybe, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it'll be US based, but I think it'll be sided on Saudi. Now we've got Sella and we've got TKO. Sella's not listed, probably will be. TKO is listed. Dana White is the ultimate promoter. Maybe Dana White will be this guy. Maybe he'll be the front of this, but he's a busy man. But yeah.
Rich, just like, moving past all things technical for, just one moment, I think this is such an exciting moment for the Saudi community. I think, their younger generation, the generation that's coming up, I've said this before and I'll say it again, it's so beautiful to see that they're going to be getting opportunities because of this, because this didn't exist before. Just very recently, we spoke about, this, I believe it was $5 billion basketball league, and now we're seeing this. They're hosting the World Cup in 2034. There are so many opportunities for talent to rise from this. And
yeah, I totally agree. It's so exciting. And, we're seeing Saudi boxers, male and female. Inshallah, we'll see them compete in the Olympics and win medals. That elusive Saudi gold medal that hasn't happened yet, but many others have. And, there's, the Algerian boxer, Imam Shi, is in Qatar at the moment, in Aspire. So we're seeing lots of more regional boxing coming up. And, we're in the Arab world, there's a lack of sports stars, success at a global level. We're having it in football now with Mohamed Salah and Marmoush.
We don't see many of them. And
who's the most famous Sudanese? Probably in running, Sudanese athlete?
Most famous Sudanese athlete? Let me think about that.
I'm sure they've had some good Olympians over the years.
They have, but I've just forgotten their names.
Yeah.
I remember they participated in the Olympics, but there's actually, I don't know how to explain this to you, Rich, but unless I can say their name and be like Serena Williams, then that's not big. Does that make sense? I feel like Mohamed Salah has achieved that.
Potentially.
He's become that level of like everyone can say his name and that's a name that you immediately remember. I feel like that's how it's like with athletes.
It depends on the country. So each country can have their stars. Like if I mentioned boxers in Ireland, you might necessarily know who they are. But everyone in Ireland would be surprised that the world don't know who they are because it's rinse and repeat. It's like you celebrate people so big in your own country, and then they get famous elsewhere, depending on where they play or whatever.
But you know what it also is, Rich, like, seeing things like this going on, partnerships like this, I think it's also signaling that there's a shift in the culture. There's a shift in what people's values are now. The fact that they're signing deals like this because, I'm Arab, I come from the Arab community. I know Emirati women. I know Saudi women. There are so many things that we're not allowed to do, by the way. So many things, you just can't do that. Like, what do you mean? Female boxer? That's like not happening. but it's like the fact that, you know, these large entities, something like Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which is directly connected to, you know, King Salman, it's showing us that there's a shift in the culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even for many, you know, it's not that long ago that females couldn't watch the football games in Saudi.
Yeah, and I remember, I'll never forget, I always used to watch these matches with my dad, and whenever they put like the camera on a Saudi woman, her hand would immediately go up and they'd like cover, and they, by the way, they keep putting the camera on them. I don't
they
know
were
why.
in the stadium. But I think there was
don't
a
know why
period
they
where
did
they
that
couldn't
to
go,
them.
and like, you know, I see what's happening in Saudi football for females, and they get paid well, and the production value is good. And like I think we're in for an interesting time, especially with the rise of female football around the world. I think I wouldn't be surprised if an Arab country wins the World Cup in football as females before they do an African or an Arab or an Asian country.
Do you remember
wins the
how
football.
Morocco excited everyone?
Yeah.
Oh, that was crazy.
The World
That
Cup's,
was absolutely
the World Cup's
crazy.
next year, by the way.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I feel like
the
it was just
Mexican American.
yesterday.
Yeah, and we're getting it again, and inshallah we'll have more African and Arab countries in it. But yeah, look, I think it is fascinating. I think it's great to see. You know, we're getting more advanced with these promotions. We're getting more advanced with these things.
There is so much more coming.
Yeah.
So much more coming.
And Turkish keeps posting photos with interesting people. You know
Very recently he was with Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
Then there was His Highness Sheikh Tahnoon.
Yeah.
Who else was there?
No, so it was Shaquille O'Neal, but I really should know that, and NFL guys. I was going to call him Brett Favre. I think he's the guy before him. Tom Brady. So he's there with Tom Brady. Tom Brady and Turkey Al-Sheikh. It's just mad, right?
I didn't expect that.
The biggest Super Bowl winner of all time. Like, so are we going to have NFL in Saudi soon?
We're gonna see. We're gonna see. There's a lot coming up. I just want to say I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Ramadan Kareem to all of you. This is Smashi Business Show, a Smashi Business production under the Augustus Media Podcast Network. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks,
today,
Ward.
Rich.
You know, sorry, my voice is I'm dry and I'm not speaking as smoothly, but we had a good chat. We had a good show, and do tune in. We have a new weekend edition with it facilitated by Ward AI voice, but we have a weekend edition of the Smashy Business Podcast, which I like listening to. It's 2 or 3 minutes, but it just gives you a recap. But the newsletter does go out every weekend at 6:30 in the morning.
Yes, it does.
Saturday and Sunday. I had a meeting yesterday with a really interesting streaming service in the region called MyCo. They're doing really well. Award. They have 20 million users. And they're 50 million in Pakistan, but they're just launching it. They're in the UAE, and they're just launching into Egypt. And what they do is they give you money for watching. They sell the ads, and they give the users money for watching. So they're getting really good now.
And their
it's
team's
free.
amazing, by the way. I love their team.
You met them at Step?
Yeah, I met them at Step.
Really nice guys. So they told us that they subscribe to the newsletter, probably because you could visit them at Step, but yeah.
But thank you so much for watching. Have a
Thanks
lovely
a lot, guys.
weekend.
Bye.